As I always tell my students, Italian can be tricky for Italians too. So today we're going to see some of the most common mistakes that even native Italian speakers make, and let's see how we're doing with them. Are you better than many native Italian speakers at this? Let's see. Vediamo. The first most common mistake I see other Italian people make is using ma però together. Ma and però are two different words that mean the same thing. They both mean but. So using them together is redundant and it's considered wrong. This is something that many kids do. They say, ma però non voglio. And when you're a kid, that can be cute. When you're a kid, that can be cute. But when you're a grown up, that's definitely wrong. So what is the correct way of using this? You can use both of these, but separately, not in the same sentence, or not together, not next to each other. So let's make a couple examples. Let's suppose you want to say, I'm hungry, but I don't have time to eat now. You can say these two ways, but remember, never together. So let's see both ways. I'm hungry, but I don't have time to eat. Ho fame, ma non ho tempo per mangiare ora. I'm hungry, but I don't have time to eat right now. Now, you can also say correctly, ho fame, però non ho tempo per mangiare ora. They are both correct. So you can say both in both ways in Italian, ma and però, but never together. Always, well, either you pick one or the other. Mistake number 2. Errore numero 2. Oh, hey, I see this a lot. You have no idea. If you browse through something like Amazon reviews, Amazon.it reviews, you have no idea how many of these you can encounter, really. So this is one of the top most common mistakes that we make as Italians. Saying which is, so spelling which is in Italian, qual'è, with an apostrophe. This is wrong. This is not correct. So the correct way of spelling this is without the apostrophe. If you want to say which is in Italian, you must spell that without an apostrophe. Now, why is this so confusing? Why does this happen? Because with other question words, like for example, how, not which, how, we do use the apostrophe. So for example, if you want to say how is, that's com'è, and that's correctly. Qual'è is the only one that we spell without an apostrophe. So remember that. For example, if you want to say which is your favorite dish, Italian dish, that in Italian would be oops, we need a little bit of space. Qual è il tuo piatto italiano preferito? Without an apostrophe. Remember that. Errore numero 3. Mistake number 3. This can be very confusing for native speakers and non-native speakers for sure, which is to get confused about these two words. And remember, the tinier the word in Italian, the more complex it is, and this is no exception. So the two words are often confused are these two ones. Si and si. They are pronounced the same way, because in Italian we only have one pronunciation for the I, which is I. They are pronounced the same way, but one has a stress mark and the other one doesn't, and that changes the meaning. So the first si means the reflexive pronoun that means oneself. The second, so it means oneself, himself, or herself. That's the meaning of si if you spell it without an accent. If you spell that with an accent, that means yes. So remember, the correct way of spelling yes is with an accent mark. If you remove the accent mark, you're using the reflexive pronoun. So let me show you an example with both of them so you can compare them and see the difference. Let's suppose you want to say, yes, he is getting ready. So we're saying yes, he is getting ready. To get ready in Italian, the verb is prepararsi. So it's a reflexive verb. So you need to use the reflexive pronoun. So that in Italian, the correct sentence would be, think about that for a moment. Yes, he is getting ready. That would be si with a stress because that's yes. Si sta. Okay, autocorrect decided to change the word completely. Va bene, autocorrect, but that's not how I want it. So, si, yes, si sta preparando. Si sta preparando. The first si with a stress means yes. The second si means himself. He is making himself. He is getting ready himself. Va bene? If you need help with reflexive pronouns, I have a dedicated video on reflexive pronouns and reflexive verbs conjugation. So don't forget to check that out. Mistake number 4. Confusing two words that are very similar, and this is something very colloquial. So in Italian, when we want to say everything is okay, we use the expression tutto a posto. Tutto a posto. This is an Italian expression, very colloquial, that means everything is okay. Literally, we're saying everything is at place. That's what we're literally saying. Now, you have no idea how many Italians spell a posto, since we say that almost like one word. Tutto a posto. Many Italian native speakers think that a posto is written like this. But that's a different word. So a posto means a fixed. A posto means okay, like everything is okay, everything is in place. Let's say in place. They're two different words. They're very similar in sound, but they are spelled differently. So a posto, one word with two P's, means a fixed. A posto means in place, and that's the one that we use for the common expression tutto a posto. Errore numero 5. Number 5 mistake that most Italian native speakers make. Confusing when to use the accent and when to not to use the accent, the stress mark, with the word da. So this is very similar to the two C versions that we saw a little earlier. In Italian, you can spell da in two different ways, with a stress and without a stress. Again, the pronunciation is the same, da, because we only have one way you're pronouncing the a, which is a. That's it. So what's the difference between the two of them and why you cannot use them interchangeably? Da without the stress is a preposition. So it means from. Da with a stress means the third person singular of the verb dare, to give. So it means he gives or she gives. So if you confuse them, you may be saying something wrong, especially when you write them. So let's suppose you want to say Carlos comes from Città del Messico, Mexico City. Then we would use the one without the stress. Carlos viene da Città del Messico. We're using da without an accent because that means from. If instead you want to say music gives joy to my heart, then we're going to use dare, third person singular, and we do need the stress. So, la musica dà with an stress mark. Please use that. La musica dà gioia al mio cuore. That's how you say it. Errore numero 6. Mistake number 6. And I would really like to know how we're doing so far. So we're out halfway through. How many of those were you making, or how many of those you didn't realize were actually mistakes? Let me know. So mistake number 6 is to say this. Se io sarei. Okay. The reason why this is wrong is because this is an expression that means if I were. And similar to English, for this expression you need to use subjunctive. Now, as many of my students know, I'm not like an extremist with subjunctive. I realize subjunctive is very complex. I realize it's really hard to use it and to remember when to use it, especially when you come from a different language. So I'm not saying this to be a snob. Subjunctive can be very difficult, and most Italians don't use subjunctive anymore at all because that's difficult for native Italian speakers. But for this specific sentence, this is really painful to hear, to be honest. It's really bad. If an Italian only needs to use subjunctive, only wants to use subjunctive for one case, this must be it, because 𝗍 sarei is really cringe-worthy. So why is this wrong? Because this doesn't use conditional, but uses, this doesn't use subjunctive, but uses conditional, but we do not use conditional in this instance. To give you an idea, this would be like saying, this means if I were, but it's like if you were saying if I was. When you say an hypothetical expressions like if, you need to use the subjunctive, both in English and in Italian. So 𝗍 sarei is definitely wrong. The correct way to say this is 𝗍 fossi. 𝗍 fossi is the correct way to say if I were. So for example, if you want to say if I were you, even in English, you don't say if I was you. You say if I were you. It's an hypothesis. It's something that's not real. It's a hypothetical situation. If I were you, I wouldn't do that. How do we say that in Italian? Se io fossi in te, we say if I were in you, not you. If I were in you. Se io fossi in te, non lo farei. I wouldn't do it. That's the correct way of expressing a hypothesis in Italian. Errore numero 7. Mistake number 7. Using the accent mark when you talk about a little. A way of saying a little is un po'. Just the word po. Un po'. P-O. That means a little. But how do we spell that correctly? Well, many Italian native speakers spell it like this. P with an O with a stress on the O. That's wrong. And you have no idea how many Italian native speakers really don't realize this at all. So the correct way of spelling a little in Italian is P-O and an apostrophe. How is that possible? That sounds weird. Well, the reason is because po is the reduction of the word poco. So actually you're saying un poco. But then we have made an elision, so we dropped the two final letters and we substituted them with an apostrophe. The apostrophe is a sign that we use for elision, which means dropping a part of a word. So that's the right way of spelling a little in Italian. Let me give you an example sentence. I like to eat a little bit of fruit every day. Mi piace mangiare un po', oops, we do need io, un po' with the apostrophe di frutta ogni giorno. Mi piace mangiare un po' di frutta ogni giorno. Mistake number 8. Spelling do and fa with a stress. So what I'm talking about these two mistakes. What do they have in common? They're both verbs. Do is the third person singular of the verb dare, and fa is the third person singular of the verb fare. Well, even though you may feel like they do need an accent mark, they don't, ever. So we spelled them. See what happened? My computer auto-corrected me. That's what happens if you spell them wrong. So, but computer, I want to show people the difference. So do, it's actually must be spelled like this, without an accent. And the same applies to fa. And let's see if we can trick the computer. No, it did again. But I hope this is going to help you remember this. So even fa must be spelled without an accent. Mistake number 9. We're almost done. This is confusing se without an accent and se spelled with an accent. So these two words again have a very similar spelling, but that accent changes their meaning. So the word SE, the word se spelled with an accent, means if. But if you spell that with an accent, that means oneself. It's a word for the self. So let me give you an example with a sentence that uses both. So again, you can see both of them and compare them. So let's suppose you want to say, she needs to take care of herself if she wants to feel well. So we have, she needs to take care of herself, the self, if she wants to feel well. How would we say that in Italian? Do you want to think about that for a moment? Lei deve prendersi cura di sé. She needs to take care, she has to take care of herself se vuole stare bene. If she wants to feel well. So the first se with an accent mark means herself. The second se without the accent mark means if. This is very common, a very common mistake for native Italian speakers. Ok, finalmente errore numero 10. Mistake number 10. Let's see how you do with this. A very common mistake, so common. This is actually the last in our list, but probably one of the very most common with native speakers, is to use the apostrophe wrong when you use un. So when you say an. What do I need with that? In Italian, we have multiple ways of saying an, as everything in Italian. So for masculine words, well, we have 4 versions: un, una, uno, un apostrophe. Now, so we have these and we have these. What's the difference between these two? How do we use them correctly? We use un with masculine words, so maschile. And we use un apostrophe with feminine words, femminile. That's the rule. But you have no idea how many Italian native speakers forget about this rule completely, so they use them the other way. Or either they always use the one with the apostrophe, or they use the one without the apostrophe without thinking of what word comes after. So let me show you a common mistake. It's very common for an Italian native speaker to do this. That's wrong. Why is that wrong? Because we never use the apostrophe with a masculine noun. Look at the formula I brought for you on top of this. If un is followed by a masculine noun, we always use it without the apostrophe. If instead if is used with a feminine noun, we must use the apostrophe. So if you want to say a friend, and that friend is a man, then you use it without the apostrophe. Un amico. How would you say a friend, a female friend, correctly in Italian? Esatto. Un'amica. Un'amica. That's the difference. And if you just remember these two formulas I gave you, and these 2 examples, you're good to go and you will always remember these. We use the apostrophe only with feminine nouns, with un, not with masculine nouns. Ok ragazzi, I know this was pretty intense, but now you have a good head start on your language learning journey, and you can also compare yourself to many native speakers. How did you do with those? Which ones were completely new to you? Which ones you didn't know were mistakes? And which ones instead you were doing right, where some Italians don't? Let me know with a comment below this video. Buona giornata e to the next one, al prossimo video. Ciao da Valentina.